It's football and other F words. We got a lot to talk about because some stuff has changed since we last chatted with you guys. I think our number one realistic option has been hired, Brian Callahan. So it's a great time to be alive. We have closure on certain things. It's time to focus on the future. And as Amy Adams Strunk said, this is not her father's NFL. This ain't your daddy's Titans anymore. This is a new era, new Tennessee. Let's forget the past. Let's leave the old ways behind us. If John Robinson was the caveman of analytics, Mike Vrabel was the Amish of analytics, but now we are embracing Chad Brinker, who is the George Jetson of analytics, the T1000 of analytics, and that's what we're going with. We have a coach that actually knows what EPA per play is and actually uses it. What a time to be alive. I'm joined as always by Mike Herndon at Mike Herndon NFL. He has a piece out talking about certain staff options for that could be under the Brian Callahan coaching tree and stuff like that. If you are a subscriber to stackandinbox.com, you had all that information January 11th. No offense to you, Mike, but yet again, I'm always first. And just want to let people know, stackandinbox.com is doubling up its coverage this week. We have Senior Bowl coverage that we're previewing. I'm writing Titan stuff. Trajan's writing Titan stuff. A lot going on Stacking the Inbox. Then, of course, me and Stoney are going down to the Senior Bowl as well. Next week, we will have live shows every morning, starting on Tuesdays right before practice. And we will be doing football and other F words. Not sure what the football show format will be that week, but we will be doing lots of videos, lots of written content from the Senior Bowl. The premier Tennessee Titans coverage of the Senior Bowl is me and Stoney, because last year it felt like we were the only ones, and this year everybody's following us again. Trendsetters and trailblazers is what we are, Mike. And speaking of trendsetters and trailblazers, I'll be going to Bluegrass Beverages, who's been around for 50 years in Hendersonville, Tennessee. All the other Hendersonville liquor stores are copycats of Bluegrass Beverages. And Bluegrass is the first. I don't know. Don't back me up. But they're definitely the oldest. And I will be going to get our provisions from Bluegrass Beverages for our Senior Bowl week over there. Whew. Okay, we got all that out of the way. You checked off all the lists. We introduced our stuff, talked about our content. We told you to follow us, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, follow us on YouTube, turn those notifications on at 440 Sports. That way, when Senior Bowl coverage pops up out of nowhere, you're ready to go. And look at this. Terminator 2's on FX right now. So what an apt discussion, or apt comparison or analogy. I guess that would be the better words. I finally got there. Mike, you were not able to join the Proud Boys of 440 Sports, the all-white panel. It's a very diverse panel. When the news broke, you were busy storming the Capitol. Not really. Please don't come get us, FBI. But you were busy. So we're 48 hours removed. Where's your headspace at about Brian Callahan, but more importantly, the hiring process that led to Brian Callahan?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just would appreciate the Titans if they would stop breaking news at the middle of toddler bedtime. That's just not. It doesn't work for me.
How does Eldon know about your Royal Rumble daycare that you take him to, the Heart Dungeon daycare with chair shots and stuff?
I'm not sure, actually. I wonder, because I told the guy I was supposed to go on the Tighten Up pod this week, and I had to cancel yesterday because of my toddler being viciously attacked by another child, and having blood in his.
You sent me that; it was like insane. I can't believe that. As you say, he took a chair shot to the back of the head. My immediate reply was, "Damn, that sucks." Do you take him to the Heart Dungeon daycare? Like, I could not believe it.
Well, this is long story, but we're not very happy with the daycare right now. This is the second head wound in the last month. I suppose. I don't know. Dominic is not still there, so he will be going somewhere else. We don't have childcare right now, which is its whole other world of hell. But that's where I'm residing right now, is in hell.
Eldon is correct. These things never happen in Nashville, by the way.
Well, true. But I will say, as far as the Titans go, I'm in a good headspace because I like Brian Callahan. We talked about him on the show last week, I'm pretty sure, extensively, as our one of our candidates of preference. I think I've always had Ben Johnson kind of as my top choice. I had Callahan as my number two. Ben Johnson, it was clear like just was not into the Titans opportunity for whatever reason. We may never know. We probably will never know. But he's just not into the Titans, and the Titans clearly were super into Brian Callahan, and I think that was pretty clear from the jump that he was their main target, I would say. You know, first first interview requested publicly, first interview on the virtual round, first interview requested on the second round. And then obviously they hired him. They didn't let him leave town on Monday to go to, I think he was going to Carolina first and then Atlanta for more interviews there. So, you know, obviously they get their guy like this. This time around, I will believe them every time, you know, Amy Adams Strunk or any like owner comes out. They always
Any
say,
owner,
oh,
yeah.
this is the guy that we wanted all along. We got our guy. They always say that. I absolutely believe her this time that this was the guy that they wanted because they made it pretty obvious from the jump that Brian Callahan was the guy that they wanted.
Yeah. So we kind of talked a lot about Amy Adams Strunk having bad processes and good results. This seems like a good process. So if this is a good process and she has learned from her mistakes and it yields a good result, then where is your faith level in Amy going forward? Because we also got to talk about how clearly and detailed she defined the power structure. Maybe that was to overcompensate for the disaster that happened after Vrabel was fired. But where are you at in grading this process as far as like good process or bad process?
I mean, I think it's probably the best process so
Okay.
far as the
I gave you two
higher
choices. Still couldn't do
either
it. You still have not
either
learned good and bad process, but that's okay.
I think it's good. I think it was good process. But yeah, I think it's been easily the best process that they've had for any GM or coaching hire so far. You know, they seem aligned on it between Carthon, Amy, Burke Nihill, who we can talk about in a minute. But his
That
interview
was a
with
fantastic
Ramon,
interview, by the
Kayla,
way.
and Will was awesome, and they should let him talk way more. Like he's great
Yes.
at that.
He is on the 1 or 4 or 5 shows a lot, but it's mainly been pumping up the new stadium and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
which, by the way, Chad Brinker is probably taking stuff off his plate with his new
yeah, maybe
assessment and
so.
stuff. So, I feel like Burke Nihill is just gonna be slowly focusing on that kinda stuff from now on. He's
Yeah.
not gonna be focusing on anything football related, but I do feel that and I kinda said this, to Braden, that, like, it always seems like Amy Adams Strunk has a bad process, like, where she acts out from some weird event that she shouldn't be acting out
Yeah.
from. And then she comes back and she meets up with Steve Underwood or she meets up with Burke Nihill, and then you see a good process in or a good result come from
Yeah.
this, right? Like, and I kind of felt like Burke Nihill, we kind of shoved him off as not a football guy.
Hmm.
If I were to hear what he said today, sounds like a football guy to me. And
Yeah.
I kind of said that. It's like Steve Underwood didn't start out a football guy, but just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean you're not a football guy. And he's
Yeah.
been around long enough to become a football guy.
Yeah. He sounded very like informed and well spoken on the, you know, all of the topics at hand and the entire
Maybe he should
process.
have been up at the presser instead of ran.
It's worth noting that I guess the people in the room for the interviews per Burt Hill were basically Amy Adams Strong. I'm sure Kenneth was there. I
I
can't
think
remember
he
if he
even
mentioned him
mentioned
by
Ken
name.
because I was going to say Kenneth was there.
Yeah. And then Nihill, Carthon, and then the two AGMs, Brinker and what's
Anthony Robinson. A
yeah,
Rob.
Anthony Roberts. So those were the people in the room. So it seems like they got all the power players in there. And the description of the process by Nihill, especially the interview with uh Callahan, sounded fantastic. So I think
Oh,
they cast a wide enough net with the 10 virtual interviews that they did. And then they were kind of zeroed in on Callahan, like I said, I think from the start. But I'm okay with that because they talked to other people. If anyone else blew them away, I'm sure they would have had them back for a
Yeah,
second
I mean, they
interview and
talked to
prioritized that.
9. I'd say they talked to 8 other qualified candidates and David Shaw or Mike Kafka. It was 8 qualified candidates and Mike
Yeah,
Kafka because
yeah.
technically David Shaw is qualified, maybe not NFL level qualified, but they talked to like 8 candidates and then Mike Kafka. In addition, that to me is the very and people were mad that they were casting a wide net, but then you look at the Panthers or look at other teams and they're casting just a wide of net.
I think
But that's what you want.
casting a wide net is a good thing. I mean, if
A
nothing else,
very
you're
good thing.
gathering information about like, because all these coaches come in and present, like, here's my plan, here's my vision, here's what I would do. Here's some of the coaches I would bring in, things like that. So if nothing else, you're getting like some names for guys that are respected by some of these coaches around the league. Maybe some guys that maybe weren't on your defensive coordinator list prior to talking with Dan Quinn, but now Dan Quinn has mentioned this guy, and you think, oh, maybe we need to have Callahan talk to this guy now. So you can only get more information about how teams view Levis or how coaches view Levis, how coaches view the Titans, like what kind of opinions they have about their personnel. Like there's a ton of information that can be gleaned out of these interviews beyond just like whether or not you like the candidate. So I'm all pro wide net. And I'm pro being decisive when you know you've got your guy. Don't let if Callahan was their guy, and he clearly was, don't let him go to whatever, Carolina or Atlanta and potentially get poached away, because there's no guarantee if they walk in the room and they love what they're hearing that they don't, do exactly what the Titans did and strike a contract while he's still there. You may not get another phone call back from Callahan if you let him leave the building and talk to Dan Quinn on Wednesday or wait to talk to Mike McDonald next week or whatever. So I'm perfectly fine with them being decisive and proactive and making sure that they got their guy. So I think all of it is good process here.
Yeah. Well, Burton Nihill said they sat down and at the time that you're building your perfect template for a head coach of what you're looking for in a head coach and all this kind of stuff, they were also getting the candidates ready, and they basically said, and this is from Burton Nihill's comments, that basically he fit the exact template of the head coach that they were looking for, which makes complete sense because he felt like that from the outside looking in. You don't even have to be in the room. And it felt like Brian Callahan, Ben Johnson were the guys of exactly what they would want, which is the opposite of Mike Vrabel at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And they Burke Nihill came out and said lack of clarity last year wasn't acceptable moving forward.
Yep.
So they fixed
I was
the
glad
clarity
they took
issue.
accountability for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And they took accountability. They liken this to the high because they cast a pretty wide net, I felt like, to hire their GM too, right?
They did, yeah.
So they also said that Rand Carthon fit the template of what they had for a GM. And they have this to me, and I'm just kind of going through some of the stuff. They didn't need a search firm, and you've already alluded to it. They said that Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, and Anthony Robinson were the search firm. They were just the other people in the room.
Yeah.
Which is what you want, right? You want the three most experienced. Yeah, more of that. You want the three people with the most NFL experience making the decisions, right? They said that. I thought this was crazy. Carthon had a master class with this process, and he even interviewed, and this hasn't been really talked about. And I thought this is something I picked up on. He even interviewed players that play for these coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that shows that he does this due diligence and that's important, right? You need players off the record, right? You don't know which players he talked about, or anything like that.
And it's
so
interesting.
You're kind of getting a little bit off the record.
He must have found guys that were either not in the league currently or were maybe on the Titans roster, I guess, because otherwise it's tampering,
Is that
right?
considered tampering?
I don't think you're allowed to talk to other players like that are under contract with other teams, but I don't know. It's interesting.
I guess that would be a fine line to walk.
Yeah.
They still the vision thing is still hanging out there, but they said that the reason they didn't put the established concrete version of the vision out there, and I'm using like quotation marks like crazy, quotation fingers, is because they wanted to leave room for the head coach to have their input in it. So a true collaboration. I don't know, but I don't know about that answer, but
I think they could have.
he did.
They could have given a better answer that would not have alarmed everyone so much initially. But I do understand where they're coming from on that.
Yeah.
The head coach needs to have some input on the vision of the franchise too.
But he did say that they want to be built for sustained excellence. And that's something that we have talked about with this team, is that there's a lack of sustainability, and they want to be in consistent championship contention, which every team does. Yeah. But I thought the sustained excellence and sustainability was a big key in a lot of what he said. I love this, and this is what I think we were tagged in this by Andrew King, I think, tagged us in it. Yeah. But it said the interview naturally evolved from just an interview to riffing and workshopping on how to turn this thing around. Like, what I loved about that is that Burke, and this what blows me away, under Vrabel and John Robinson and Mike Mularkey and Ken Wisenhunt and all these previous guys, we would never get this insight that I'm about to tell you, right? I feel like we never get this insight. It didn't matter, and that's just a knock on the previous regime, 3 or 4 regimes that we've had here. What defines the perfect X wide receiver? Like, what trait is for the X wide receiver in this scheme? How many? What? Then you go to the Y. Then you go to the Z. And this is what they're talking about. What exceptions are acceptable to you when you have? So you have your defined traits, right? Your athletic scores, your height, your weight, your whatever. How many exceptions do you want on your team versus do you want an exception at this position? And I think it's great that they just kind of like went into this natural mode of just 2 dudes talking football. Like, I wish I could have been on the fly in the room to see that like naturally happen. Yeah. And that's part of collaboration, right? It's part of, like, to me, that's a big sign that you could throw all these fancy words around, like oversight of coaching staff and final roster control. But this really sounds like we're getting what we were promised last year in collaboration.
Well, I will say it's a little bit of a forced collaboration in a way, which I'm not like complaining about, because I think ultimately you almost do have to force that, because at the end of the day, someone has to make a decision, right? And the decisions very clearly are going to be made by Carthon. Carthon gets all the power on the football side of things in this arrangement, because he does have control of the roster. He has control of Callahan and Callahan's coaching staff. So
control. They kind of went to define that later.
Yeah, but I guess I'm saying, like, if there's a disagreement about an assistant coach on the staff, ultimately Carthon has the right to make the call, right? Like, that he can overrule Callahan. So it's very clearly defined now, which I think is good. I think that helps everyone in the building understand how the operation works, who's in control, who has the power, all that stuff. And as long as that's defined, I think everyone can work and collaborate within that environment. And it won't be the wild, wild west like it was last year from all appearances here.
Well, one of the things about this structure is not only to eliminate confusion, is to also limit distractions from Carthon's responsibility as a football general manager.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know who did it last year, and maybe there's just like this mass confusion. But the stuff they added on to Chad Brinker was, first off, he was already doing stuff with the salary cap. He's already doing stuff with the analytics department. He's pretty much, his job responsibility was pretty much already over there. But now they've added on stuff like grounds, the security, video stuff, comms, all this stuff, information systems, all this other stuff. And it's really everybody, because everybody's like, well, he must be Rand Carthon's boss. No, I think they're equal footing. I think they are essentially splitting the managers of a general manager / president of football operations. I don't know everything that John Lynch does, but I do know that he has Parag Marathi, who does the stuff that Chad Brinker does.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a similar setup there, except for where Kyle Shanahan has final say, Rand Carthon has final say.
Yeah. Well,
but I like that. I
there's
want Rank Carthon just to be a football GM.
and there's basically two GMs, one who does the kind of boring back of house stuff, and then one who picks the players. Basically, like Carthon's role is now very clearly defined as you are in charge of building the roster, and in charge of what our product on the football field looks like, and that's great because that's something he can focus on. That's something that he's supposedly very good at. I think we'll see more about that in the next few years, and I do think that like part of the whole statement about them being blown away by Carthon last year was maybe a little overstated. But look, like I get it, they're gonna pump their guy up, like I understand that, but
it's because when you think about it, it's like they've kind of have to do a little damage control on his reputation. I think it's laughable. I mean, it's very easy to see through it, their attempt to do it, because we all know what really happened, in that the most part, he was like kind of like castrated. So they're trying to do damage control and pump up like the San Francisco boys. Cause that's what it felt like to me, is like, oh, look at all these San Francisco boys that said they wanted to come to and play because of Rank Carthon. So we're now a premier destination because of that. I mean, like, I get it. It's a good PR strategy, but it's also a laughable in its how serious you can take.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like look, we all understand like Carthon's limitations as far as what was available to him last year from a salary cap standpoint, from a power standpoint, because like clearly Vrabel,
from a free agency pool standpoint too, the free agent class
it
sucked.
sucked.
I mean, like we said that going into it, we said it during it, and we said it after. It didn't all of a sudden get better because Rank Carthon and Mike Vrabel didn't get the best ones available at every position.
And especially at the positions that they really needed to fill, right? Like those were the positions that were the worst. So it was a bad combination of things. And I understand like Carthon did what he could, and I thought he did fine. As far as a first free agent haul, and I thought the draft was good. Yeah,
right? There was some promise.
The draft was proven to be pretty good so far. So
yeah,
there's enough there to like, still have some hope for that. And honestly, I'm intrigued to see what it looks like with him kind of having the full leeway now to kind of run the show, and it being clear that he is the guy now moving forward for this team.
Yeah, what do you think of Jim Wyatt at casually? And you may not, I think I sent it into the chat, but casually, he likes to drop them casually in a mailbag sometimes. But, remember last year he said something about Nate Davis? Well, Saturday, he says that and Mike Vrabel was heavily involved in not only signing Andre Dillard, but playing Andre Dillard. He was very, in the way that he used the punctuation and dashes and periods, lets you know that everybody's and I don't know where this whole rumor got started, and I think it got started on Buck's show, and then it got tagged to something that like, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I don't mean to like throw Buck under the bus. And then it got, I think, something that he said in his interview, but Jim Wyatt is telling you, Andre Dillard, Mike Vrabel, like that is what he's telling you. Now, whether that is PR control or not, but that rumor had been around for months before he finally semi-confirmed it in a roundabout way. But I want to talk about the coaching staff, because we talked a little bit about player building and all that kind of stuff, and we'll dive a little bit more into Rank Carthon and some other stuff. But building the staff, this is what Burke Nihill said. So we're recording this on Wednesday night. Wednesday, they're already working on the staff, right? They are collaborating, going through everything about the staff. Excuse me. He's not going to tell Callahan who he can or can't hire. He's going to help stress test Brian's ideas. So basically, he's going to put him through a ringer, put him through the ringer, and if there's candidate interviews that he's a part of, going to put them through the ringer and stress test. I explain what that kind of is. That's some corporate jargon, but
that's not corporate jargon. It's John Taffert jargon.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess that is true.
The stress test.
Funny you say that, because I just watched a bunch of Bar Rescue.
I love that show.
Recently. It's a great show. But I mean, like the whole point of it is to this is a different setting than his stress test. They're not bringing in all the players at once and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, he even confirmed what I've said from the get-go and what you have said. The major differentiator between all the candidates was staffing, and Callahan had the best staff, the who and the why.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, who I want, why I want it, and boom, there you go. And if the really Rand Carthon's like only input is if there's going to be a gap in Callahan's staff that Rand can help with, like let's say that let's say that they have exhausted the tight end candidates that Brian Callahan has. And Brian Callahan, after the stress test, he's not really feeling it. Rand Carthon's not feeling it. Rand Carthon may throw him a couple of names out of his Rolodex. That's to me is kind of like where that's collaboration yet again with also oversight. It's like oversight collaboration.
Yeah. And I do think Callahan to me as a candidate too was appealing in the fact that like he had a variety of places that he'd been. He'd been in the league for 14 or 15 years. And he also has his dad's connections, like the great piece from I think it was Dan Pompey at the Athletic that went back and talked about all the quarterbacks that Callahan had been around throughout his career, and one of the ones that he mentioned was Rich Gannon, who was Bill Callahan's quarterback with the Raiders when he was the head coach there, and Brian was in high school at the time and just kind of hanging around practices
hung around him constantly.
And
I told you this damn
knowledge
story last week in the fucking
Rich
episode
Gannon.
we talked about Brian Callahan. I've said this story on the air twice. Start fucking listening to me.
Well, you didn't say it on this show. I think you might have said it on.
I said it.
But it was, but yeah, soaking up information from Rich Gannon. So like even his dad's contacts and his dad's friends and people like that are going to be open to Brian Callahan in a way that like other coaches just don't have that. It's one of those things where it is an advantage to have a father who's been in the NFL for 25 something years, 30 years, whatever it's been, and has been around a bunch of different coaching staffs himself. So like he's got a pretty wide network of coaches to pull from. And look, I mean, he seems like one of the things to me that I liked about him is like obviously he's an offensive like geek in a way, right? Like he's into the analytics stuff. He's very like forward thinking as far as his comments about the pass game, being king in the current NFL and things like that. But he's also got a presence about him that you don't feel like he's like this nerd. Like he's not Bobby Slowick, right? Like he has a presence to him.
He
has
nerd.
some energy to him. He's gonna command a room, I think, pretty easily. I think he's.
We already seen stories from Orlando Brown. I think it was Orlando Brown, or was it Juwan Jennings? I don't know. Someone already said, like, he got told that he told off the whole entire team at some point heading to the bye week, and they really took it to heart. But he did it in a way where, like, they came back and they went on that big 4-2 run to end the season or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, so he could do it. Bobby Slowick, I don't think anybody's can be confident that he can.
Yeah, I just can't see Bobby Slowick like chewing an offensive lineman's ass on the practice field, right? Like,
yeah.
And it does matter to some degree because and especially look, we don't have to talk about the whole Vrabel thing, but you are going from Vrabel, who was like a guy's guy of guys and the alpha male and all this stuff. In several of the players that are going to be on the team next year, namely Jeffrey Simmons, but also several others, Harold Landry, guys like that, really liked Vrabel and really liked Vrabel's approach. And to get through to some of those guys, I think you're going to have a little bit of that like fieriness and ability to stand up for yourself. And I think Callahan does bring that in his personality just from watching interviews with him, listening to what other people say about him. I think he's got a little bit of that fiery side to him, even though even if he seems a little more calm and composed in an interview setting.
When when the Titans went from Marcus to Ryan Tannehill, there seemed to be like this weird energy with the players, right? Like, obviously, Ryan Tannehill's a different leader. They had some great success to start out with them. They really kind of rallied around the whole quarterback change, right?
Yeah.
Because he was a totally different quarterback, more talented. He was a totally different leader, more passionate, more vocal.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is going to be the shock? Because like guys like Jeffrey Simmons, guys like let's see who else was going to be there. Feels like there's not going to be a lot of people here next year.
There's going to be
like
a big roster turnover.
Yeah. Chig Okonkwo, guys like, the rookies, the second years and the third years, anybody from really 2018 on has only experienced Vrabel, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is going to be the culture shock when maybe like, what do you think these players are going to say by the beginning of training camp? Are we going to see like a totally different energy in training camp, do you think? Or one way or the other? I mean, it could be a worse energy for all I know. But do you think there's going to be a different kind of energy that everybody's going to be like, man, this is weird?
I bet there will be a transition. I mean, like I do think from what I understand from Bengals people is that the Bengals operate I guess you would say one of the lighter preseason or off-season training schedules.
Oh man, Milan just missed out, right?
Practice schedules in the league, like they aren't going necessarily maybe as hard as some other teams all summer. Not to say they aren't working hard, but just the physicality, the full speed reps, the things like that, maybe aren't quite as much there. Which, look, it's worked for them. They have not had issues with physicality really on that team. They've been pretty physical up front on both sides of the ball. Being able to run the ball well, being able to stop the run
You're talking
well,
about
things
the
like that.
Bengals,
The
by the way,
Bengals,
right?
yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
And so
I felt like it kind of got lost which team we're talking about, but we are talking about the Bengals. This is not a Bengals podcast.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that will be a difference, but hopefully that maybe helps them stay healthier because for the most part, obviously Burrow going down this year is a major exception, but it's not like the Bengals have been ravaged by injuries the last few years. I mean, most of their guys, the big guns, have kind of stayed on the field. Chidobe Awuzie had a ACL tear. You had DJ Reader, I think, had a quad tear this past year, and then of course Burrow with the calf stuff this year, and then the shoulder deal. But it's not been an avalanche of injuries like we've seen in Nashville. So maybe there is something with the way that Vrabel ran practices, with the way that he runs practices as compared to Callahan and the way Callahan will run practices that could help the Titans stay healthier. So that'll be something that I'll be very interested to track and just, see how the players react.
Let's just jump right into one of the things. That falls under the purview of Ran Carthon's new power structure, because we're talking about health. We're talking about practices. It has been brought up numerous times by almost every ex-player. Doesn't matter if they are ex-player that likes Vrabel, dislikes Vrabel. It doesn't matter. They all say the same thing. Practices are a little fucking tough. And we saw that in the press conference that Ran Carthon ran or was puppeted to run after Vrabel's firing. He mentions injuries a lot, and it's something that I picked up on so much. But he pretty much said through the whole entire time was like, well, this didn't go as planned because of injuries. It's been happening for 3 years. We got to figure this out. We have to figure out this injury stuff. We have to figure out our health. We have to figure out injuries. He said it throughout the whole damn press conference. And then lo and behold, when the power structure comes up, he is in charge of sports medicine. Now, I am a little surprised that this didn't fall under Brinker's purview, because Brinker has some fancy algorithm or software we're not privy to know the details of that does something with injuries. I am efforting at some point to try and find Chad Brinker at the Senior Bowl and try to figure this out. I would love to just know from a nerd standpoint what that means. Like, what is this going on? Like, tell me. I can understand it. Let me relay it to the people. But it's obviously something that it hits home for Rand Carthon in the fact that this is what he wanted as part of his responsibilities. I want to be involved in sports medicine. So he is driven and determined to figure out the correction. Now, listen, you cannot control injuries. You can mitigate injuries, but you cannot control injuries. You can mitigate the practices and all this stuff. And you are talking about that with the Bengals. When you saw Rand Carthon come up on this thing, on the statement, and it said sports medicine, what are you thinking is the next steps for this sports medicine department? Because there is a sports medicine department, but there's also strength and conditioning that probably falls under that category too. Is just given a different title.
I'm not sure where that line will be drawn. Well, ultimately, I guess it goes under Carthon either way because, we know he's got, say over over Callahan's staff. Usually strength and conditioning coaches fall under the coaching staff. And then you also have the team doctors and the trainers and stuff like that would fall under the front office staff. But yeah, I think that'll be interesting. I would assume most of that is going to end up getting reviewed, at least, if not changed out. It's particularly the strength staff. Like every coach pretty much wants their own strength staff who's going to, train their players the way that they want their players trained, and things like that. So I would imagine that what Frank Perino and Brian Bell and all those guys that have been a part of the strength staff for the Titans since Vrabel came here, basically, are probably out, and we'll have a new strength staff coming in. And then you would hope they'd review the medical staff, the training staff, everything about that department with all of the injuries and things like that over the last few years. And
is that vegan nutrition lady still there? Maybe her.
I don't know. Yeah, what is it? Jarrell Casey's buddy she that he brought in or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how all that gets overhauled under Callahan and Carthon.
I have a question. And now this kind of falls not under anything that we're discussing, but it got brought up into my mentions, and I haven't even thought about this person at all when Vrabel got fired. But I was asked, do we think we're expecting Stretch to be fired soon? And I go, well, I think they would let him go if Vrabel got hired somewhere, but I don't think that they're in a hurry to let him go somewhere because Stretch does provide value in whatever he does, his shadow operation that he has up there. But I feel like Stretch does have value, and maybe that's ultimately a Brian Callahan decision. But I feel like someone that does have value for the organization, tangible value for the organization that we have seen in game management, and he does enjoy analytics, so he's not, too far, gone in that direction. Obviously, his loyalty lies with Vrabel, but I also feel like kind of like with Terrell Williams, because someone I think brought this up in your mentions as well, is like, if Vrabel doesn't get a job, you ain't quitting. And I don't think that they fire two guys like Terrell Williams or especially Terrell Williams. I didn't see any defensive line coaches that really piqued my interest, but I don't think you would fire Terrell Williams and let Stretch go if Vrabel's not hired anywhere. I mean, what do you think about that? Like, am I being a little too altruistic and naive, because I kind of feel they do provide a tangible value for your team.
I think
especially Terrell Williams.
I think on Stretch, yes, because to me, Stretch is like an extension of Vrabel based on everything that we've heard. And you can't have that guy just lingering around the building calling Mike after, work and saying, oh, yeah, these idiots are doing this, and this, or whatever. Like, you just can't have that happening. So to me, like, Stretch is gone. Terrell Williams, I think you'd love to have him back. Now, I'm sure he feels some loyalty to Mike Vrabel after, he gave him the assistant head coach title. He let him coach the preseason game. Like, we know Vrabel did a lot for Terrell Williams to try to promote him. And look, Terrell Williams is getting some defensive coordinator interviews as well. So whether or not he gets one of those jobs, we'll see. But I would imagine Terrell Williams would be one that they would love to retain if possible, and if Terrell Williams wants to come back. Because like Jeffrey Simmons is going to be back. I'm not sure who else is going to be back on that defensive line at this point. But we know that he has a good relationship with Simmons. That would be something that you may want to keep intact as you move forward into this new era. But yeah, Terrell Williams, I wouldn't mind having him back. I wouldn't mind having Charles London back, guys like that. Which I don't think Charles London probably has a huge loyalty to Vrabel or anything like that. So it'll be interesting to see kind of like. There's going to be some holdovers. There always are. There's probably going to be 2 or 3 guys on the current coaching staff that stay and can kind of serve as a bridge to the new coaching staff, which will be good. But yeah, I think Stretch won't be one.
As long as it's not Jason Hoteling, Rob Moore, or any of the to me, it's like I'm okay with Lori Locust if she stays. I like Lori Locust. I'm okay with Ryan Crow.
Yeah, Crow was another.
I like Terrell Williams. I like Chris Harris, and I like Charles London. Charles London is the only guy you could maybe talk me into Jason Otten, Joseph Otten. He got me into Otten.
Yeah,
maybe, but I don't know. Charles London is the only guy on the offense I'm keeping.
Yeah, I would mostly want to change out the offensive staff, and the defensive staff too. Frankly, I mean, look, if you're gonna bring in a new defensive coordinator, which it seems likely they will, I can't imagine they're keeping Shane Bowen. Although I don't necessarily know that it would be a disaster to keep Shane Bowen, to be honest with you.
No, don't do this, Mike. Don't be on the wrong side of history. Just backtrack now. I can't edit.
I don't think it would be a disaster, but I think there's probably better hires that they could make. And I've listed out the hires that I think that they should try to make, but it'll be interesting to see where they go. But if you go with a new DC, they're probably going to want to bring in their own guys too. So I think you're more than likely going to see, bigger changes. Yeah.
On this defensive coordinator, you don't seem to be a big fan of Wink Martindale.
No.
Explain, because he had really good defenses with the Ravens, and then him and Brian Daboll did not pass it. See if you would have had a stress test when Brian Daboll was hiring his staff, you may not have ended up with these two knuckleheads that hate each other. But he is a proven good defensive coordinator. So why do you not like him for the Tennessee Titans?
I feel like he's a one-trick pony. I feel like he is going to blitz his ass off every game. And I just don't think that's the best way to approach football in the modern NFL. So that is not my preferred defensive approach.
So you just want to play a little safe little defense, play a little patty cake and all that kind of stuff. Have your defensive backs and cover 4, 50 yards down the field. That's what you want.
I want somebody who mixes things up. I want somebody who keeps offenses guessing and not just
I do
blitzing again. So
if only they could get Mike McDonald, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so real quick, he's involved in player engagement as well. And Chick Agisi, I have just fucking butchered it. Don't even fucking worry about it. I'm sorry. Agiasi. That's probably closer.
I think
as director of player engagement. Because the first thing when I hear engagement now, because this is where our generation is at, I think social media, and I'm like, why is Rand Carthon worried about the players' social media? But the primary responsibility of the player engagement is to coordinate the Titans rookie development program and assist new Titans players to make the transition to Nashville. Among other duties, he communicates with Titans players regarding various team and league programs, like the gambling policy available to players, assist players in returning to school to finish a degree or pursue graduate school, and with financial education and internship opportunities. Now, to me, this screams like Rand Carthon wants to be involved. Obviously, you let your directors do their job. You don't micromanage, but you want to be involved and have some oversight in this, because I feel like this is totally a Rand Carthon thing. We know that former players come in and hang out with Rand Carthon. He tries to get them involved in stuff. We know that he really cares a lot about the man behind the player. I think this is a really good thing for your general manager to have oversight in and to have knowledge of what is going on with this department. So I like it. I like that he's involved in this part. A part that I didn't even really know fucking existed. It's like I went to the Bengals staffing today, and they have at the very bottom, they have like a football coaching staff operations manager. It's at the very bottom. It's like some weird title, and you can't click his name and see his bio, so you don't really know what his responsibilities are. But I thought it was a weird title to have. You get weird titles when you go on this stuff. Hold on, I'm about to tell you what it is.
Yeah, I think Chick he handles all the transition for the rookies and stuff like that into the league, and then
he's chief of coaching staff. Like, what does that even mean?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's like chief of staff for
did
like
you know
the
this that
president.
they cross train all of their coaches at the Bengals apparently to be scouts at the same time?
I did hear that. Yeah, I did hear that. So Callahan has some experience. That's partially because
See his ass down at the Senior Bowl on the field. Now be up in that booth up there. Be down on the field like Wink Martindale was last year.
The Bengals are one of the cheapest organizations in football, so they keep a pretty lean staff, anyways. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they have their coaches kind of double as scouts, and Callahan may enjoy working with a team that has an actual scouting staff.
So, do you subscribe to the scouting staff as it currently sits? There are 19 people on the scouting staff. 18 are holdovers. Anthony Robinson is now the only scouting staff member who's over everybody, and maybe that's why he's in that position.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously there's contracts involved. I don't know like how strict contracts are, and at this point you obviously let these guys play out their contract. It'd be nice if they weren't here.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least the ones that were obviously feeding information to discredit anything that Rand Carthon did, because that's what you would want anyway, right? In a very Game of Thrones-esque atmosphere, you need to get rid of all your adversaries and all their minions. So do you expect a lot of turnover at this position after the draft?
It would have to happen after the draft. I do expect some.
In your mind, it has to happen after the draft.
Yeah.
And so frankly, why is that?
Because that's when all scouting contracts are set for. So
so it's more of a contract issue, not like, well, you'd have to bring someone in for new processes and all this stuff. Because I'm thinking, no, they've already scouted all these players. You just compare notes.
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to do that right now, just because you'd have to train somebody on the fly, like as you're going to all these events and like during your busiest season. It'd be like hiring a new accountant to a CPA firm in the middle of April or whatever during their busiest time of the year. So it would be difficult from that standpoint. But really, mostly the deal is that like all of the scouts are set on contracts by the draft. So like at the end of the draft, that is when contracts for scouts.
Is it year by year? Is that across the board in the NFL year by? You know what? We should have fucking asked that guy that was on our podcast a couple
no,
months
I
ago.
don't believe I don't believe it's all 1 year deals. I think you can have multi-year deals for your scouts.
That's what I was wondering.
But it is it isn't also a problem where like if you want to hire an experienced scout, they're all under contract right now. So like you if you fired them, you're not going to be able to hire a guy
you can't trade for a scout.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to hire a guy like from the Bengals scouting staff or from the Ravens scouting staff or whoever you wanted to take from, because they're going to be under contract through the draft. So that's when that'll switch over. But I also think a good scouting staff is important, but I also think people maybe oversell like the importance of who is actually doing those things. It's more about like how they're trained to collect the information, to present the information, because ultimately these are like fact finders. Like they aren't like, yes, they
but
are
these are the same fact finders that did not find any facts on Isaiah Wilson or Caleb
agreed. So I think there has to be some guidance there as far as like, hey, you've got to dig on all of this. You've got to find all of this information for us. So like, and I don't know the Titans scouting staff and like the individuals in those roles well enough to know like, well, this guy's just lazy and he's not going to call Kirby Smart and he's just going to wing it or whatever. Like, I don't know if that's what's happening, or
we can know whoever the Southeastern scout is. We know that that's what he does.
That was a problem. Yeah. But I think if Carthon and Brinker and Robinson are ultimately making the big decisions on who the Titans select. They're going to watch the film on any guy that they're actually seriously considering selecting. So to me, it's all about like the scouts are really information gatherers, and then they're collecting it, putting it into a format that is easy for Carthon to digest. And I don't know if he's overhauled their systems from what John Robinson was using or not yet. I know he talked about trying to assimilate to their system last year. I don't know if that changed in year two.
But
But
do you have to worry about poison pills? Like someone just like sabotaging you?
I mean, I guess maybe, but if you want to stay in your job, you probably should try to work pretty hard for the guy that's currently employing you, and clearly has gained more power in the organization. So, um, yeah, I'm surprised they didn't make more staff moves last year after the draft. But now it seems that that's probably because Mike Vrabel was really running everything. From the sounds of it, and
Doesn't like change.
maybe didn't want that to happen. So, um, I would imagine we'll see some turnover in the scouting department. But hey, look, it's not going to stop Rand Carthon from being able to have a good draft. Like it's just not. They're going to get information. He's going to still be able to do his own fact finding. They're going to talk to and interview all these players. So he's still going to have a lot of information to work from, and be able to get good players in.
Are you okay that Rand Carthon has final say in roster control?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad. I'm glad we're on the same page there.
Yeah.
I really expect a little bit longer answer, but that's okay. I like it because
Yeah.
I mean I'm with you. I think that like here's in my mind, based on what we have heard from Rand Carthon tried to do last year, and maybe he was able to do some of it, is like they're gonna sit down and Brian Callen's gonna say, "Here is my system, and here I'm gonna tell you I clearly defined the positions and the traits and the skills that I need for this system.
Mm-hmm.
If I need 4 wide receivers, I need 4 wide receivers. They need to be starting caliber. It can't be like 4 wide receivers and your boy Nick Westbrook-Ikine, which you clearly are in love with for whatever reason.
I'm in love with him.
I mean, like
that you completely missed the point of that post. It was that Jawan Jennings is just a guy, and Vols fans need to quit freaking out every time he blocks somebody hard.
So I just want to throw that out there. You love Nick Westbrook-Ikine, and you hope that he's resigned. And then he's going to collaborate with the coaches about what traits and skills are needed for those positions, right? So it's a collaboration there. He's going to collaborate with the coaches about the exceptions, like we talked about, and how many exceptions to have. He's going to work with scouts to find those players. Then Rand comes back and discusses said players with the coaches, and then takes into all that information. Rand finalizes said players, and that's going to happen for the 90-man, the 53-man, the draft, the free agency. That sounds like how it should run for every team. Am I mistaken in that? Like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills sometimes when I hear people say, like, I feel, he has final roster say. Yeah, he's general manager, right? I mean, like, there's a difference between John Robinson having final say and not including anybody in some of these decisions. And then someone that's clearly is open to collaboration, because we've already heard that Rand Carthon wants to like show tapes, show us what you want, show us the tape. We'll go get you what you want. Like that to me seems like, there you go.
It's a different power dynamic for sure. Yeah, I mean, look, most people, or I think most teams around the league have that set up where the GM is in control of the roster. The exceptions are the San Franciscos and teams like that, where the head coach has like control over the 53-man roster, and that's an exception that I think is earned at some point
Do you
by
really want to
a
give a
coach.
first-year head coach
No,
that's also taking on play calling duties extra responsibility?
no, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I'm totally
that's how
fine with
I
that.
am too.
I'm a little
Yeah.
bit the one thing I'm a little bit surprised about in the structure side of this conversation is that that Carthon has say over the coaching staff, because to me, like, that is Callahan's domain, and I do think he will mostly
but it
get
does
that
use the words oversight.
oversight, which ultimately means he's in control, right? Like that.
But he's
That
not. It's
I'm
not
not
like
saying,
he has to. Callahan is like, oh well, I really want this guy, and like I really want to bring in Bill Callahan, and I don't think Ren Carthon's going to say be Zach Taylor and go, well, go fuck yourself. You're bringing in Jason Hoteling back, right?
yeah,
Like I kind of feel like Ren Carthon we've kind of seen. Let me say this: we've kind of seen Ren Carthon. Maybe it was a strategic thing, but kind of and let Mike Vrabel hang himself. But he's kind of was a little bit of a beta male in some situations. And I feel like maybe Ren Carthon trusts the coach to make the right decision. Maybe beta male is a little strong word.
yeah.
But I feel like he lets the coach make the decisions to trust the coach more than maybe other GMs may.
I think the structure makes sense because of who Rand Carthon is. If it was a different general manager, I don't know that I would feel as comfortable with the setup for that reason, because
Yeah.
I think it is
I think
asking
I think
for
Eldon
overreach.
I think Eldon says it best. It's more like you want a guy from Colgate, please prove he deserves this job.
Yeah, no,
But
I'm with
also
that.
like we talked about this last year with the offensive coordinator and even offensive line position. Why didn't Mike Vrabel lean on Rand a little bit more to give him more options?
Yeah,
And he
I
didn't.
think
He
it's
just ran his own coaching search. And I kind of think this is kind of like I think Carthon's running his own coaching search, but I think he's now aligned with the coach that kind of wants the same things he wants. So it
yeah.
does. I don't think that you're going to have. I don't think you're going to have the butting of heads. In other words,
I agree with that. I mean, I think there will be disagreements, but I think ultimately now
yeah,
we know who's coming out on top. So, like, to me, like, Callahan gets a, a say. He can argue passionately if he feels strongly about it, but at the end of the day, he's going to have to accept whatever Carthon says he wants. So I think that's good, and it's healthy for there to be disagreements that they can respectfully come to a decision on. But I do feel like, yeah, look, Frabel clearly didn't want Carthon to begin with. He didn't want him. He didn't think he was, qualified for the job. All this stuff. Like, I don't think Vrabel was ever receptive to anything with Rand Carthon, despite whatever they said in the opening press conference. Um, I just think it was very clearly going to be a fight anytime something like that came up, especially over coaches and what Vrabel would have rightfully considered to be his domain.
we were
So
talking about chair shots to open the show. I'm pretty sure Vrabel would have probably. We know that he slammed Urban Meyer up against the wall by his throat. There's
yeah,
a good chance the chair shot would have probably been thrown Rank Carthon's way if he told him to he started meddling in his coaching staff.
yeah, I could see that. So yeah, I think it's personality wise, I trust Carthon to not have overreach in with that power. I think
Yeah.
the weirdest thing of the setup is, well, between that and then the fact that Chad Brinker kind of stands alone in his own island, which I completely don't have an issue with it. Because I don't think that there's any
I thought that was weird in the
problem
sense that
there.
I think the title is throwing everybody off because
Well, he
it
reports
seems
directly
like
to Amy Adams Strong too. That,
right.
like, he's no longer
And
under
there's
Carthon.
apparently not a lot of clarity with that either. It's like kind of like there. I think what happens is that he works with Rand now, but he reports to Amy Adams Strunk on. If I had to guess, okay, if I had to guess, is that they're equals, right?
Yeah,
Because there's a difference between being a director of operations and if you go to my tomorrow morning stackinginbox.com, I'll give you a little, I don't know, it won't show up really well here, but I have a flow chart. Okay, there is a flow chart that shows who's under Chad Brinker, who's under Rand Carthon, and how the departments are separated. So this idea that Chad Brinker is above Rand Carthon is not true. There's things that he has that Rand Carthon is not doing.
yeah,
We talked about it earlier, like the video, the security, grounds. I
yeah.
mean, they
I think
gave him a bump in title. Like, to me, they gave him a bump in title is to be like, well, you're doing this extra stuff that nobody wants to do that Burke Nihil can't do either. So we're going to give you a bump in title and a bump in pay.
I think, and I do think that Greenlaw brings up a good point that it could also be trying to insulate them against, potentially someone trying to swoop in and hire Brinker, because I think Brinker is kind of a rising guy on the radar of teams just because his background is super impressive.
Because the football stuff that Brinker's in charge of is just analytics, which he already was in charge of,
right,
and the head of. He was the head of that department.
That's the most important
and the salary
thing.
cap. Yeah, and the salary cap, which guess what? He was already above Vin Marino in that. That has not changed. Like, the dynamic between, this is what people need to understand. The dynamic between Rand Carthon's jobs under football GM that we just went through and talked about, and what Chad Brinker is doing on the football side, they coincide. He's still assistant GM. What makes him president of what they call him, president of football operations, is it's not the operations of football. It's the operations that go into game day, the travel, the security, the day-to-day stuff that is involved in groundskeeping. That stuff
maintaining
is
relationships with the vendors that service their video systems and things like that. Whatever
they
use to
literally
tape
lay it out for
and,
you, right? They literally say right here, like, he's in charge of. He includes his day-to-day responsibilities will include direct oversight of the football departments that address the football departments that address salary cap management and analytics strategy, which he already did. That was already his job.
And I think that's still the biggest part of his job.
Damn it, don't listen. They've added well, I'm trying to combat people in the comments that don't know what they're talking about.
Okay.
And they've added communications and information systems, team operations, including security, video, equipment, and grounds. That is what he is doing. And that, if you go back and look, and because I've looked at way too many people that do football operations for whatever, when they did the czar thing a couple of weeks ago, I went back and started reading about everybody's president of football operations. Like, they basically all do this, and without the salary cap and analytics, which you already had. So what I am telling you is that, like, the day-to-day stuff, this little stuff that does not matter in the scheme of the football team, that matters in the scheme of the on-field or the game day experience, the travel for the team, that's what he oversees. He doesn't oversee Rand Carthon in anything. They literally just told you that. He doesn't oversee Carthon in anything.
Yeah, they both report to Amy Adams Strunk. They are two equals in the power structure. So I think it's an interesting setup. It's different, like, to me, but it's fine. Like, I understand the logic behind it, so I really don't take any issue with that. And frankly, just to talk about, like, the overarching kind of theme of the offseason, while I have issues with how the Titans got here and the firing of Vrabel and everything else like that, I still think Vrabel's a good football coach. I love the direction that they're going overall. Like, I love that they're steering into analytics. I love that they're trying to modernize their approach to football. I love that they went and hired Brian Callahan, who Bengals offenses over the last 2 years are the most pass heavy on first and second down of any team in the league in neutral situations. It is clear approach of, we are not going to be the running back led team anymore. And like I saw someone in the comments talking about, like, you got to re-sign Henry, whatever. That's not gonna happen.
Oh my god, did someone say that in our freaking comments?
Yes.
I just figured I just saw that I have the option to put users in timeout, and that user deserves to be in timeout. I don't know who that was.
Yeah,
You're lucky. You're
saw it
lucky.
come through a minute ago, and I was like, "Yeah, that's not happening, buddy." If you listen to what Callahan said, and I put the clip on my Twitter the other night when his hiring was announced. I guess it was Monday night, but he basically said in the modern NFL, teams that throw the ball the best will win the most. And that is the truth of the modern NFL. I know some people will refuse to believe that for whatever reason, but the truth of the modern NFL is you have to be able to pass the ball at a high level. And Callahan went to a step further and explained you have to be able to win outside with your receivers. So look, I think this team is going to prioritize getting receivers, particularly those who can play outside, like what the Bengals had. I don't think they're going to necessarily try to build the Bengals 2.0 because I think you've got some pretty unique pieces on that team in Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow that you're not going to have here. You're just not. Will Levis is a different type of quarterback than Joe Burrow. The Titans don't have anyone remotely close to Jamar Chase or T. Higgins as far as from a skill set standpoint. DeAndre Hopkins is a good player, very different skill set than what those two guys have. So, I think the thing I like the most about Callahan is that he's been flexible with his offense over the last few years in Cincinnati, and he's been given a lot of credit for them rebuilding that offense on the fly multiple times. I mean, they basically said like I think it was either last year or the year before they were really struggling to get the outside zone going. They were basically having an issue where they were almost telegraphing that they were running the football because every time they got under center they were running the ball and running outside zone basically. So they just decided to scrap that mid-season and completely change the way they ran the football. They completely redesigned their run scheme mid-season and started using more downhill shotgun runs, things that fit more with what Joe Burrow is comfortable with in his offense because he likes to play from shotgun. He does not like turning his back to the defense, that kind of thing. And they're, different quarterbacks have different preferences with that kind of stuff, but they totally rebuilt the run game on the fly. And then this year, they go to Jake Browning because of Burrow's injury, and they completely changed the offense again to go back to some of that under center run game stuff and to go back to some of those big play action shot plays because that fit Browning's skill set better. So they have proven that they're malleable. They have proven that they're willing to change based on personnel. And I am super excited about that with Brian Callahan. But I think in his ideal situation, he's told you he knows you have to pass the football. And you have to be able to run the ball efficiently too. He mentioned that in that quote as well. But first and foremost, you have to be able to pass the ball. And I think you're going to see a lot more emphasis on passing the ball successfully, and getting personnel in that can help you pass the ball successfully.
Rest in peace, your boy NWI.
Yeah. I mean, the NWI wide receiver 2 days are over. I think you're going to see real investment at the wide receiver position, which is exciting. I mean, I think you're going to see a very different Titans team on the field in 2024. Whether that's a huge winning team or not, I'm not sure just yet. I still think they're going to have some bumps along the way roster wise as they try to rebuild this thing, but it's going to be more exciting. I think the offense is going to score 30 points multiple times this season. It'll be very different.
So this is a common question that when this thing came out, this is a common question in the group chat and stuff. For me, what does Vin Marino do then? Well, here's what it is. These guys oversee the departments.
Yeah.
So the salary cap management department, Chad Brinker probably has this. Let's just say, let's put it in a corporate structure kind of term, because that's typically what it is. From what we have known, good scouting departments or good personnel departments and coaching staffs, they have an open door policy, and they have one big conference room. So I'm sure Chad Brinker comes in with Vin Marino and Robbie Boren and a couple of other people that are directors or vice presidents of the specific things that he runs. So that was salary cap management, Sarah Bailey and analytics and strategy, communication information systems, team operations, and stuff like that. Okay, so those guys, the team operations means, the groundskeeper, the grounds, the security, the video, the stuff that we talked about there. So Vin Marino then lays out. He may look at Vin Marino and say, "Hey, Vin, Rand told me that we need to figure out a deal for Tyler Boyd. Here's a list of free agents. Get on the phone with those agents, negotiate the contracts. Here's your limit or whatever. Here's where you can go. If you have any problems, come back to me." And Vin Marino goes and does that because Vin Marino's been around for 17 years and has relationships with agents, has experience negotiating contracts. So he still does all of that kind of stuff. And then if he runs into an issue, he goes back to Chad. Or maybe they do a big group meeting with all the directors. Then they do Chad Brinker. Vin Marino sits in on a Vin Marino salary cap meeting with all those people. That's just how it goes. So Vin Marino still has a reason to exist because he needs to be able to have people that he can trust with experience in these positions so he's not having to micromanage every little thing.
Yeah. Brinker's not going to personally execute every single task under his purview. He's overseeing the people who do those things, and setting the vision for those departments and the strategy for those departments.
And the salary cap department and the analytics department will work with Rand.
Yeah.
And Rand hired Chad to go ahead and do those last year. So nothing's changed on that front. The only stuff that's changed is that all this menial, boring stuff that really nobody really wants to do it. I didn't even really want to talk about it. The communications and information systems and team operations. Like I lumped all that together because this kind of feels like the collection of departments a football-focused general manager wouldn't fucking want. And then Burke Nihill's probably like, well, I can't do it either because I got the new stadium and he's passing the buck. So they're like, Rand Carthon then passed the buck to Chad Brinker. And Chad Brinker's like, well, I want a little title bump and give me a little bump of pay. And I'll talk to the groundskeepers. I'll talk to the security guys. I'll do all that stuff for you guys. Like that it's the Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation. And they laid it out for you.
Yeah.
Yes, he day-to-day operations, but it's a day-to-day operations of shit that nobody else wants to do. Like nobody wants to talk to the head of security and tally up the number of drunk disorderly conduct arrests that they had. Well, then we got to limit beer sales and all. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to sit in those meetings. They want to coach football. They mean not coach, but they want to work on football. That is your power structure because I think Kenneth Krall said it best. So essentially, they both have a lot of power just over different operations of the Titans. And that's exactly correct.
Exactly.
That's 100% correct.
Yeah.
Mike, I think we covered everything. 1 p.m. Central Standard Time on Thursday is Brian Callahan's introductory presser. You would assume that Rand Carthon is also going to speak and take questions. You would assume Amy Adams Strunk is going to read from a piece of paper or teleprompter. Do you expect her to answer questions, or do you think she will, and do you want her to?
I think she probably will actually, because I'm pretty sure she answered questions at Vrabel's press conference. I'm pretty sure she did.
But what about Rand's press conference?
I don't think she
did, and she had fired Rand.
Yeah.
Fired J-Rob.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe she won't, but and I don't know. I don't know that I have to hear from Amy on this one. Because frankly, I think their statements have clarified a lot. And Rand
except for the vision.
Yeah. I think we know what the vision is now, right? Like it's pretty clear what it is.
Oh, so now it's clear even though nobody has mentioned the vision?
I think it's pretty clear what it is now. I mean, everything that they've talked about.
Are you just taking the context of the hiring and adding it to the statements they've already said? Is that what you're doing?
I'm taking the context of the hiring. I'm taking what Burke Nihill has said. I'm taking all of the other pieces of information that we've gotten over the last, couple weeks. So just
the buzzwords. Because that's what I mean, let me be honest. I've harped on this for forever. Or, well, not for forever, for like 2 weeks. That we have been told the vision. And everybody's all mad because nobody has said the vision.
I think they've made
out
it
in
more
public, but
clear.
nobody has still said the vision.
Her statement has some things in there, I think,
The
that
same stuff that she
contribute to
already
it.
said, but nobody has said it. She's just written it down.
That's true. I'm sure
Okay.
they will be asked. I'm
Okay.
sure both Callahan and Rand will
I'm
be
just seeing if
asked.
we're just all if everybody's flip flopping to my side now or what. But I'm just saying, a lot of people, we're all mad and huffy and puffy that they didn't say the vision. Her and Ren
It
Carthon,
was
they only
weird that
wrote it down.
it was weird that when he was asked, he was not willing to say anything about it. That it was not the time to talk to reveal
Same with
the
her.
big secret vision.
He's just echoing what the owner said.
It was a little weird, and I do understand the whole like, all right, well, we had to wait to hire Callahan so Callahan could have the,
I found it weird because
whatever.
they already wrote it, right? Like they wrote it down, but everybody's like, "Well, we don't have the vision." Well, we fucking got it in writing. But now you're saying that we do have it in writing.
I think we all know what it is. I don't know that we
Okay.
have it in writing. I don't know that we have to have it in
A
writing
little
at
bit
this
of a
point. It's
uh,
clear the direction they're
the
going.
very first statement when she fired Vrabel.
Okay, but it's clear that there are more specifics outlined now that we know that Brian Callahan is going to be the coach, because it's clear they are an offense-led football team now. They are a
So they
passing-led football
don't
team
need to
now.
say the vision tomorrow.
They are an analytics-led football team now. Like they are. That's the direction they're going. I'm happy that that's the direction they're going. I think it's pretty clear. Like if they want to say it out loud, I think that would be
Okay.
great if they said it out loud.
If you're on
But
this show next week or I see a tweet from your fucking account that says, "Can't believe they didn't say the vision,"
I don't give a shit
be
about the
pretty upset.
vision. I don't give a shit about the vision anymore because
Oh,
I know what it
oh,
is. I
wow!
think.
How the tide has ebbed and flowed since last
Well,
week and eroded
I
the shore.
that's why I'm happy about the Callahan hire, because the Callahan hire fits what I thought the vision probably was, but it wasn't made clear
Okay.
the last
So you just
week.
got
So,
confirmation bias.
well, yeah, now it's pretty clear. Yeah, they
Okay.
have a vision.
Okay.
I think they clearly
I'll be
targeted
monitoring.
Callahan.
I'm setting alerts on for your tweets because I know this is gonna flip flop at some point.
It's not
It's
gonna
gonna.
flip flop. I am very happy with the process of the
Okay.
interview process that the Titans just went through. I'm very happy with the result of getting Brian Callahan. I think he's going to be a good football coach. I don't know if he's going to win huge here or not. Like we'll see. There's a lot that goes into that. Um, but I think they've done a great job with that. Um, I do think. Do you think Bill Callahan ends up coming here?
Oh, absolutely.
You think so?
I'm fairly convinced, and it's going to include a title bump, and then you and PK and TD, who went wishy washy, who all are interpreting the rule incorrectly,
I don't think we're
or
all
that
interpreting
change.
the rule incorrectly.
Yeah, because you're all reading from the same thing and not reading from the actual rule, where they even describe what the intent of the rule is. But you guys are ignoring that. That's okay. I think that he's definitely going to be here, and he's going to have a title bump, and you all are going to look so silly, and I'm never going to let you forget it.
I think he'll be here one way or another, but I don't know that it's going to be some assistant head coach bullshit title that gets him over the hump. I
Could
don't
be
think
run
that'll
game
cover it.
coordinator, could be pass game coordinator.
I think it would have
Those
to be a
they already have
coordinator
those, so
level.
they have to fire someone else. So
Yeah,
they have to fire Terrell Williams if
there's
it's assistant head coach.
there are
They could easily
complications
fire
to
Justin
doing it.
Otten.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there are
no
complications to getting it
complications.
done.
Let me tell you something. People in the NFL, because I've asked NFL communications, and nobody knows what the answer to that question is, because they only know that rule is for coordinators, for the
Right,
coordinator position. So
correct.
and right now, what we can know about this, we know a few things about this rule. I'm glad you brought this up so I can make you look stupid. We know a few things about these rules. One, when a team promotes someone or gives them an additional title, when someone gives someone an additional title, they themselves call it a promotion. We know that you cannot block anybody from getting a promotion. So if every team at one point or another has agreed that that is a promotion, boom, there's evidence number one.
No,
Two,
no, because you can block from, like, if you tried to hire an assistant quarterbacks coach and make him your quarterbacks coach, you can block that because that is not a
since when?
coordinator level uh, assistant.
When does that happen?
The differentiator is for, obviously you can't block anyone from going to a head coach job unless they're already a sitting head coach, and you can't block anybody from going from an assistant, like a lower level assistant, to a coordinator. Like the coordinator level is where the distinction is drawn. It is not.
But
it doesn't have anything to
when
do with
have
a
you seen an
separate
assistant
title.
head coach be, or sorry, not assistant head coach, assistant quarterbacks coach be blocked for any of that?
I don't have a specific example in mind, but that is not,
because there isn't one.
The way that the
Now,
rule is described.
That rule's for coordinators only, is not for
Right.
these other positions.
Right,
But
because
that's what I'm saying
you
is
can
that
block other ones.
but nobody blocks. Nobody blocks. And you would have to give a reason. Because first off, the NFL is going to approve. Because when you get the deal, when you say, hey, if they go and say we want to interview Bill Callahan for, let's say we're going to make him our run game coordinator and offensive line coach. We submit that to the NFL. Mm-hmm. We also at the same time submit that to the team, the employer club, submit that to them. The NFL approves it. And then if they disapprove it, they have to give a reason why to disapprove it. It's not just like, well, you can automatically block it. The NFL then has to approve the block.
Right.
So the reason why the NFL has not approved any blocks except for distinct lateral moves.
Well, if it was so clear,
precedence matters.
Precedence does matter, but I think we are not seeing a bunch of guys get these like, oh well, he's a run game coordinator, like kind of.
We
stuff.
see it all the time.
Otherwise, well, no, but not to poach from another staff.
Scotty Montgomery, Charles London, and Chris Harris.
Yeah, but those guys were allowed to leave anyways.
How do you know? Where was it said they were allowed to leave?
I don't know. I'll go back and do some research on that. Okay. But those
Scotty Montgomery, it was specifically said in the Indy Star that they could not stop Scotty Montgomery from going because it was deemed a promotion from running backs coach with Indy. He went a running backs coach with Indy to assistant head coach and running backs coach with the Detroit Lions.
See, that goes against everything that I've understood from this rule and what was explained. Because you are
focusing on the coordinator rule and not the other general rules that matter.
Yeah, I still don't think that's correct. But we'll see. I still think Bill Callahan ends up here one way or another. And if he does, that's a massive, massive deal for the Titans, which is the most important thing here. That getting and by the way, this pissed me off today in my mentions on Twitter. I posted something about, let's say, for example, that the Titans do request Callahan and the Browns block him.
Wish I can't, but go ahead with your superfluous.
Well, let's say they just asked him to be an offensive line coach. They don't want him to be an assistant head coach or whatever bullshit tag they want to add on to that, to what his actual job's going to be. Let's say they request him as an offensive line coach. The Browns block. Theoretically, you could trade for him, right? Like at that point, you could offer the Browns something to remove the block.
I guess cash considerations, I guess, would be what you would do.
A late round pick or whatever. But I asked people, like, what would?
And the Titans really don't have any late round. It had to be like a future late round pick.
Right. But
we need all these 7th rounders this year.
What would you be willing to give up to get Bill Callahan here on the staff? And the amazing thing was, now a lot of people just said, well, I'd rather have Munchak anyways. Which
I'm with those people, by the way.
I get it. I think Bill Callahan.
And there is a connection between Munchak and Callahan, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's not out of the realm of possibility, because Bill Callahan or Mike Munchak did try to get him to interview for offensive coordinator, but back in the day, teams were allowed to block even the offensive coordinator, which is why that rule went into place.
Right. But so there is a connection there. So I think it's potential that Munchak could end up on the staff. If Bill Callahan is not, but I still think you'd prefer Bill Callahan. One, because of like the relationship, obviously, but then two, the scheme that he runs is more suited to what Brian Callahan is likely to want to run in an ideal world with the Titans, versus what Munchak has typically run in his previous coaching staff. So I think there's a cleaner fit from a scheme standpoint with Callahan. But the amazing thing to me, and look, if you prefer Munchak, the history with the franchise, all that stuff, like he's awesome. I don't have a big issue with that. But the number of people who are like, I wouldn't offer anything because it doesn't, a position coach doesn't matter that much, are like, what are we talking about? Like,
oh my God, you just blew my fucking mind.
We
like, if you watch it on YouTube, my head about snapped off my neck because it is just jerking around in amazement that people are like, well, if as long as Jason Hoteling had all pros, we would have been fine.
Yeah, that's literally what people were arguing in my mentions was that, well, all it matters is that you get better players. Guys, we just complained for years about the offensive line coach position here, and like you listen to Mitchell
Even
Schwartz
when
talk,
they were good and they
Marshall
had good
Newhouse.
players, people still complained about Keith Carter. The
Yes.
Jets have really good players, and they all fucking hate Keith Carter. Like, that whole area of New York hates Keith Carter. There is no reason, if you have the chance to have Bill Callahan for a 7th round pick, look, even if it's like a 2025, 7th or whatever, doesn't matter. Or Mike Munchak, you take those options. You
Absolutely.
don't mind. Well, we'll just bring back Jason Hoteling, and we'll just sign Trent Williams, and we'll keep Peter Skoronski. We'll draft or we'll sign or trade for Elton Jenkins. We'll get what's a good right guard in the league? I don't know.
Zach Martin.
Best right guard here. And then on the right tackle, we'll get the best right tackle in the league as well. And boom, there you go. Jason Hoteling can't do any wrong. They still have to learn the system and be taught stuff. But hey, Jason Hoteling surely can do that.
Yeah. But I was blown away by people making that argument. I'm like, I would probably trade up to like a 3rd or 4th round pick for Bill Callahan, to be honest. Like,
whoa, that's a little rich for my blood. Just get. I'm with the people that say just get Mike Munchak.
Yeah. I mean, like you're talking about a guy that's turned Wyatt Teller from a nothing into a Pro Bowl offensive lineman. He took DeJuan Jones and turned him into a good right tackle this year. I think DeJuan Jones is talented, but he got him ready to play and play well down the stretch this year. Ethan Pochich, he took off of the Seahawks scrap heap and turned into a really good center in Cleveland. Like, he consistently makes a good offensive line out of spare parts. I mean, they've spent one high pick on that offensive line, and that was Jedrick Wills, who is, not even really that great, but that whole group is fantastic together and has been for years, and it's because Callahan is a badass. There are certain offensive line coaches, Jeff Stoutland's one of them, Bill Callahan's one of them, Munchak, I think, is one of them.
He was around.
Scarnecchia was one of them at one point, that make that whole unit work on such a level that, like, no matter who is on that group, almost you are getting at least league average, if not higher quality play. So, like, to me, offensive line coach is almost more important than defensive coordinator. In fact, I think I might argue that it is, as far as the staff position.
I think when you have this level of attainability to get someone of the caliber of Mike Munchak or Bill Callahan, that makes it more important than a defensive coordinator. But if you miss out on those two guys, it's critical still to find someone that doesn't coach Vacation Bible School flag football, but you got to find someone better than him and Keith Carter. But then defensive coordinator takes the cake. It's very critical for this team that offensive line works. I know a lot of people are like, well, he comes from the Bengals and they have a shitty offensive line. Yeah, but he also comes from the Bengals and has shitty offensive line. He's come to a team that has a shitty offensive line. I think he's going to want to have at least an average offensive line. Like, I feel like, especially since he's wanting to work with his father, he obviously understands the importance of a good offensive line coach. But the fact that Zach Taylor does not want nepotism and family hires
is kind of shocking to me.
Short-sighted that it is just insane to me.
Yeah.
That you see how bad your offensive line is, and you've invested in it in free agency, and you're like, no, I think I'm good on one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. What does keep letting your quarterback get hurt? I think people are going to overrate what he has said about the passing game as focused on just wide receivers only.
Yeah.
I think after you've seen the Bengals and seen the star quarterback get hurt, knowing that you're coming into a season where the offensive here at the Tennessee Titans have been shitty the last 2 years. San Francisco invests a lot in their offensive line. And you know that Will Levis is currently injured and battling injury because of the offensive line. Then you have to, like, I think that there's going to be a more of an emphasis on offensive line than what the Bengals have shown. I do still think wide receivers win out, is like kind of how I feel.
I don't think it's a lack of emphasis though, even on the Bengals, because I think they've invested. They drafted Jackson Carman, 46th overall in 2021. They took Jonah Williams, 11th overall in 2019. They spent a ton of money on what's his name, Orlando Brown Jr. They have spent some resources there. They spent a good bit of money on Alex Kappa and who was the other one they signed? I can't remember now, but
Jonah Williams. No.
Yeah. Well, Jonah Williams was draft pick, but
he's everybody's favorite.
Cordell Volson they drafted in the 4th, so not a huge investment there, but they have spent high picks. They've spent big money to try to fix it. They just haven't been successful at fixing it. And so I think there will be an emphasis on fixing the offensive line because look, Rand Carthon was here. He experienced this shit last year too. But I think if you have Bill Callahan, that goes a long way to making your fixes stick. Whether it ends up being Joe Alt in the draft and whoever, Michael Onwenu at right tackle or right guard or wherever he ends up. I think they're going to invest some pretty serious resources in the offensive line as well as at receiver. Like, I mean, look, you could go the route of because I really don't think T. Higgins is going to be here. By the way, I think they're going to tag him in Cincinnati.
You're getting Tyler Boyd, and you'll like it.
I don't want Tyler Boyd, honestly.
You're going to get him, and you'll like it. What I just fucking say.
I'm out on signing 30-year-old receivers. But it's
doesn't matter. You're going to get him, and you're going to like it.
You've already got that spot filled with DeAndre Hopkins. I don't want like all the 30-year-old receivers on the roster at the same time. But
Mike Evans.
I mean, I'd be more interested in Mike Evans for sure, especially because Mike Evans has a lot of T. Higgins to his game.
I'm a big Darnell Mooney, little Mooney boy guy.
I know you are. Mooney. I know you are. But let me say this. And this will I'll be accused of being a homer. A.D. Mitchell has a lot of T. Higgins to his game.
Like A.D. Mitchell.
He's 6'4". He's got really good ball skills. He makes some of those contested catches like T. Higgins does for the Bengals.
Hey, my mock drafts they go Joe Walt or Olu Fashanu, whoever is there, and then A.D. Mitchell.
I'm with you. I mean, like, look, that's about where the Bengals took T. Higgins to. I think they took him 35th. I think the Titans were they're like 38th or 39th with that second pick. So right in the same range. I could see A.D. Mitchell being there, T. Higgins, and obviously at a lot cheaper cost, over the next 4 years.
I could see them signing both Gabe Davis and G.J. Chark if the opportunity arose, they can get both. So
yeah.
That could be your 1-2, and then you just draft whoever. We let DeAndre Hopkins hit the. That's just to really piss off someone in the comments. As far as that's concerned, I think we're all wrapped up, and I think we're done. Here. An hour and 34 minutes, a lot longer than what I thought. And of course, we got derailed into you being wrong about how the coaching structures work and organizational stuff and all that kind of stuff. But that's typical. We get in the weeds when you're wrong. Other than that, Mike Herndon at Mike Herndon NFL on X. Tell the people what you wrote on podcarsky.com, which everybody should subscribe to.
Yeah, I wrote my full thoughts on Brian Callahan, the hire, what I think he's going to bring here from the standpoint of what this offense is going to look like, and God damn, Greenlaw, get out of here. and also what, coaching hires they may bring in, free agents from the Bengals that I think would make some sense here. Which, by the way, like I said, I don't think Higgins will end up being one of them, but there are other guys on the Bengals that make a lot of sense here. So yeah, go check that out over there.
Stackingtheinbox.com is where you can find all my written stuff. I break down the power structure. I have a flow chart, a little handy dandy flow chart for everybody who doesn't understand what was written in the statement and how.
Real quick before we get out
What?
of here, I gotta interrupt you. So we do know now that Brian Callahan is going to call plays. How do you feel about that aspect of it?
He's calling plays. That's how I feel about it. Like, I'm not trying to, like, I didn't care if my head coach called plays or didn't call plays. Like, I feel like that's such a give or take kind of deal. Like, we've seen people that have taken on the play calling responsibility when they didn't have it, flame out. We've seen people that have done it and they excel at it. To me, it's not a big deal for someone that's been an offensive coordinator for 5 years who has learned under or been around someone that took on the play calling duties when not calling plays. Like, it was one of those things where, like, it sounds cool at the time and everybody's regurgitating it. So you're like, oh, well, this is definitely a necessity that our head coach has to call offensive plays. But the more I was writing about other coaches and talking about, I was like, I don't know. It's like, I don't think it's really that important. It's cool. It makes you see how it works out.
I think it's good. I think it's preferable in the sense that, like, your quarterback, if Will Levis is going to be your quarterback long term, and if Brian Callahan is going to work out,
but he could have. The system stays, right?
The system stays. But I think the voice in your helmet, talking to you, working through things, being consistent over a long period of time could be beneficial.
It's kind of like when you have been married for a while and you kind of look at your wife and you go, I just don't know if I could date anybody if you die, because then you just have to learn, another language pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and I also think it doesn't really matter that he didn't call plays before. Mike McDaniel didn't call plays before. Zach Taylor had barely called plays before. Sean McVay had barely.
Zach Taylor did not call plays before. Kevin O'Connell did not call plays.
Zach Taylor had called plays on an interim basis in Miami at one point prior to going to LA for like 4 games. It was like 4 games.
Look at you with the deep cut over here.
Yeah. Look, Zach wrong again. But no,
first time.
A lot of examples of coaches who did not call plays as coordinators, who did call plays as head coaches, who have done a great job. So
when there's this guy, I don't know if you have him in your mentions on X. This is how we're gonna get out of here. This guy that on X, Jorge Grisman or something like that. I put up something about, oh wow, we really got we got my number one guy, or like Brian Cullen. He goes, well, he's never called plays before. That was it. That was the whole X. And I go, okay, this is a pro Vrabel guy, like worse than you and Mello. Pro Vrabel. This guy is definitely related in some fashion to Mike Vrabel. It's like, okay, like I don't know what that means. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, oh well, he's gonna suck because he never called plays. We don't know what he's gonna be.
Yeah, so, yeah. I mean, I like the direction that they're going with the hire. Whether it works or not. Like I was excited when they hired Ken Wisenhunt too. So look, it could be good, it could be bad, but I like pretty much everything about Brian Callahan, and am extremely open to him being successful here.
Will we have? Okay, fuck, we really gotta get off this thing. But final question before I promote my stuff that you interrupted, and I'll let you have the floor about your stuff. Will we have any coaching hirings or staffing hirings announced by them either before the press conference or at the press conference?
I know he's going to be asked about his dad coming. So
whoa, phrasing.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It is after dark. But I'll say no. I'll say no staff hirings announced either before or during the press conference. What about you?
Okay, well, on that very sexual note, we're gonna exit out here. Stackingthebox.com, see your premier Senior Bowl coverage. So just make sure that you're tuned in, subscribe to stackingthebox.com, turn on notifications for sports. Go to Bluegrass Beverages, our lovely sponsor in Hendersonville, Tennessee, who I have not talked about for an hour and 40 minutes now. But Bluegrass Beverages, Hendersonville, Tennessee, they're the best. They know exactly. You go in and you tell them, I'm kind of feeling a whiskey, but I don't want something that burns too much on the back of my throat. I love the hint of oak, and I like to taste the barrel on the front end. Boom, they'll get you covered. Bluegrass Beverages, Hendersonville, Tennessee. I'm Zach. Follow me on X at FWordsPod. He's Mike. Follow him on X at Mike Herndon NFL. This has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.